Well, whoa. All right. Good evening, good people. How you feeling? Y'all been talked at a lot, so we're gonna figure out this sound stuff in a second. Just 1 second. All right. Good evening. So, we were talking about, the fact that it's 8 o'clock and y'all been expecting to hear from us for a minute. And so we figured we could get regrounded together in a collective way, because what we know is if we can't breathe and sing together, we probably can't get free together, right? And in Southern, because y'all know y'all in the South, right? It's Midwest.
Shout out to the Midwest.
Yeah. But Missouri was a slave state.
Yeah.
Up south, indeed. We're gonna do a little cultural opening, as we should, as Highlander-esque people. So everybody that's willing and able, please rise with us. We're gonna sing it in. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind. It was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. We're walking and talking with our minds stayed on freedom. We're walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. We're walking and talking with my mind. They are stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And everywhere we go, we're gonna let it shine. Everywhere we go, we're gonna let it shine. Everywhere we go, we're gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. 'Cause we woke up this morning with our minds stayed on freedom. We woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. We woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Y'all sound amazing. Give it up for yourselves. Sounds so good. I hear you with the good baritone.
I tried to do a little bit.
I hear you, man. So do y'all mind if me and my comrades just have a conversation for a few minutes? Then you. Yeah, then you. Eli, when Eli first asked, Ash, CommonBound's coming up, it's going to be in the Lou, which is home away from home for many of us. And he's like, who would you talk to? I was like, well, I really miss Makani and M, and I just want to talk to them. So I said, I just want to talk to my friends. And so I recommended him and Makani, and they graciously said yes. So can we give it up one time for Makani and M, Freedom Inc. and Higher Ground. So, these are incredible comrades. So we're just going to talk for a little bit, and then we're going to invite you to be in conversation with us by some Q&A time. Sound good? Great. So just to set some context, what we had talked about maybe rapping about was just a little bit of what has happened that got us here. What in the world? You know, look, I use a lot of explicitives, but for the sake of shared company, I'll say, what happened? What happened that got us here?
A lot of isms.
What that mean?
Capitalism, colonialism, racism, heterosexism, cisgender, every kind of ism you can think of happened. That's my short answer.
Yeah. What happened, Makani?
Ooh, like all of that, but also here is, there's so much about here. Because there's like the here that's the like, oh, here we go.
Your mic.
It's my, you know, it's my mic.
Where'd it go?
Oh, see, it's like having a little party over here. Is it even on?
I don't know if it's on.
All right.
We might. I'm gonna have
here
to.
we go. And hopefully
Boom. Come through, Eli. Give it up one time.
Eli is the man, right? So, you know, here, what does it mean to be here?
Yeah.
So there's like the here, that's like what's messed up. And then there's the here that's like amazing.
That
right?
resiliency.
That work, you know, so yeah, so there's like the isms, right, that got us here, but there's also the solidarity, like the thinking, the organizing, the dreaming that got us to another part of here, too, like all of those heres.
Yeah. There's a song that some of the cultural organizers in the South taught me about. The lyrics are like, we are the children of the ones who did not die. We are the children of the people who could fly. We are the children of the ones who persevered. We are fearless, we are strong, and we're ready to carry on. And I think coming onto this stage after indigenous people who have been dealing with all them isms for as long as white people been here, right? Being in this sacred space that folks are building together to talk about collectivism, right? Cooperation, feels super special. And I think that, as was said earlier, the grand inheritance of working at Highlander is that you are very aware that you live in the past, present, and future at the same time. And what's simultaneously true that I think is important for context is that I believe the three of us on this stage, and I'm bringing a political assumption to CommonBound, believe that it is impossible to have black liberation or indigenous sovereignty or anything in any real long-lasting way under capitalism. And it's something that we, as like folks that are deeply invested in the movement for Black Lives, have said pretty explicitly, right? It's like, black people will not be free. There ain't no amount of money you can make. There ain't no proximity to power you can get and be free under capitalism. Period. Right? Period.
Point blank.
Point blank. Period. So it's why this space is so important, to figure out and envision how to build and sustain movements for a new social solidarity economy. Okay. Anything else y'all would add about like what happened? It's a big question.
A very big question. I really appreciate Makani's intervention in saying the here and what happened is all the terrible things done to us, but us being able to still be here is all the incredible cultural work, spiritual work, resilience work, organizing, revolutionary work done by our folks in unimaginable times. And I think for me, I find that intervention particularly inspiring as we're in a particular moment where, I don't know, maybe you all are in spaces where people are like, is this fascism? Is it not? Like, right? When there's a lot of learning and responsiveness to the Trump administration. And I think it's important to be responsive, right, because we don't live in a vacuum. And sometimes we diss that, and we shouldn't, because people have real needs right now that we need to struggle to meet, and conditions can change. But while we're being responsive and while we're trying to assess and figure out how to respond to these things, it's important that we also assess where we came from in terms of resiliency and really be scientific and drawing off that history to create a different here, to create a different right now that can project us to a different future. So I think that's inspiring.
Yes, and I would yes to all of that. And then in some ways, and hopefully this doesn't sound like a contradiction, but contradictions are sexy too.
It's
right?
true.
So
Can
come
I
with me to a sexy contradiction.
Don't y'all want sexy contradictions?
Y'all like sexy contradictions, right?
Yeah, I'm about that.
I'm going to say I am a sexy contradiction. That's what I'm going to say.
Isn't she though?
Right? I get to say that as an elder now. But also, you know, I've been thinking a lot about patriarchy.
Speak.
And you know, as a black woman, with other things going on, you know, which, you know, my identity is a complex thing I've been working on for almost 60 years, but also just how much, there's so much in our movements that we lose because of racism and people that get left behind or that we don't see and we don't honor, and their work is brilliant, and we kind of disappear that work. And there's just so much that happens because of patriarchy too, right? And the two together, right? Together. And as a person who's been in the movement a while, one of the things I want to also say and honor in terms of how we got here, some of the here that we didn't get to, that we'd like to be further, like from here to there or whatever, or to a better here, has been our struggle with not holding the humanity of everybody tender in our work and acting as if there was some kind of line, like part of you gonna get free, you know, or some part of you is not. And so my dream is that we step into this moment, and it feels like we're getting closer and closer because more things are being named and more that to leave that stuff behind in our work. Like, yeah, it's one thing to fight it. It's another thing to be like, you know, wow, do I have to really be in another meeting where I just said something and no one heard it until the guy said it? Or do I really I mean, these are like micro things, but they're also macro things because they add up to the movement that we are and the work that we are and the freedom that we hold. And whoever we're not seeing, whoever we're dissing, whoever we're disappearing, it makes us all less free, right?
You know, that must be stuff that we deal with that y'all don't deal with on a regular basis. We just having a conversation internally, so if it don't fit, don't wear it. But if you feel it, you can snap, it's okay.
Can I build?
Yeah, go ahead and then I'll jump in there.
I want to build on this patriarchy thing. So I think patriarchy is as much a threat to us as racism. It is as critical a function to capitalism as racism. Sure. And so if we're going to be committed to ending, tearing up, punching in the face capitalism, sorry if that was too violent. That's how I explain it to my baby, sorry. But if we're going to be as vigilant, as adamant, as unapologetic in ending capitalism and understanding we have to do the same with racism, we have to then logically be the same way around patriarchy. But like you said, a lot of people think that you can separate it, and even people who don't think you can consciously separate it don't understand patriarchy systemically well enough to know how to separate it in tandem with ending capitalism. And we see it all the time, right? We see it in, like you said, these interpersonal, where it's like, oh, it's not legitimate if a woman says it, a queer trans person says it, a feminine person, somebody not, cis man says it. But we also see it in how nation states interact with each other. We see it in how, I think so we've been building a lot around what's happening with these U.S. imposed borders, because that's who's doing this shit. The United States is imposing a border on a group of people, unrightfully so. We see it with international trade policies, right, around who's most impacted around labor and the role of particular countries to source labor and who produces workers and whose responsibility that is, both internationally and domestically. So the construction, so really what I'm trying to drive home is that abolishing patriarchy as a system, abolishing patriarchy as a system, and I am using the word abolish very intentionally as a person, as we as people who come from a herstory of abolition tied to what the state is doing as systems, and patriarchy is part of that, right? And so we have to take with the same sort of seriousness to abolish patriarchy as a system in order to get to this non-capitalistic, what I think should be socialist future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sounded like
so
a directive to me.
Yeah.
sounded like a directive to me. And I mean, and I think that I think sometimes as folks who take the science and art of building new worlds that aren't actually all that new, is actually sort of a reclamation of our people's shit, right? Stuff that systems and people took away from us, right? Sort of in that theory of, you know, capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy literally dismember us from our old ways, from our spiritual practices, from the ways that we build economy and practice, economic practice, et cetera, that our work to remember it, we take it very seriously and sometimes overcomplicate really simple shit.
That's right.
Right? We make rocket painting out of rocket science out of finger painting a little bit, right? So when I think about like building a new economy, it's like if I go home and I talk to my 30-year-old brother about building a new social solidarity economy, he's gonna be like, what? If I'm like on the west side of Chattanooga where I'm from, and I tell people that live in a food apartheid zone, not a desert because deserts are natural.
That's right.
Right? But a food apartheid zone because it's very man-made and intentional. Like, yo, y'all want like a Dollar General or a Walmart to give food. Why don't y'all start a co-op? And they're like, how do I do that? And they're like, and then I'm like, yo, you need like this many tens of thousands of dollars of capital to make this move. They're gonna be like, really? You know, and if I don't have any answers and regular people speak about how we can actually envision and sustain this solidarity economy work, they're gonna be looking at me like, but I thought we sent y'all out here to come figure this stuff out so that you could bring these tools back. And what makes me excited about CommonBound is that y'all are interrogating those questions, right? About how to make this thing real and live for regular people, for everyday folks. Not that we aren't, we everyday people, we sing that song on the reg. Like we regular people that come from regular people. And how do we make this conversation just as accessible and live for folks back home as we do at this amazing institution where we're like studying and being intentional about taking a conversation to another level? How do we then articulate that back home? I think is something that's really, really critical to land as we continue to build space with each other.
And I just want to say that, and not just interrogating, but there's a lot of folks in this room who are actually doing the damn thing, right? And those liberated zones are important, right? Because they're examples. I live in Jackson, Mississippi. Y'all can
Where do you live?
Jackson.
Jaffrica?
Jaffrica. I live in Jaffrica. And
Jaffrica forever.
Right. But I want to be clear though, because you know, Cabral said, "Tell no lies, claim no easy victories," and so I'm not trying to do that. There's a whole lot of work. There's a whole lot of stuff. It's not Wakanda, and even and some of that I have some issues with that. Also, speaking of patriarchy, but I feel like, you know. Part of where we are at is we're in this place where there's like these amazing experiments happening, right? Where people are playing with and learning that in spite of all the hype, when you go to school, you learn that that competition is natural, right? That we are supposed to be separated from one another. And then, and you get all the story about how it just can't work. From everything from quote unquote race mixing to, you know, just like a lot of story. And what we do is we burst those myths in spaces, but also in the places where it gets hard and it gets ugly, then we're like, see, they told us we weren't going to be able to get along. See, they told us we weren't able to make this happen. But and so it's part of it is like doing the work, and it's also telling the stories, like how we do both things, so that other people can know it is not only possible, but people are actually doing it in spaces, that we can move beyond it's possible to like actually there are these spots, and then we connect. And what I love about CommonBound and had so much fun last year in Buffalo was having conversations with people who are actually in practice. And I think part of our challenge too is how do we raise up those stories, and not in ways it's like, oh, it was so perfect, it was beautiful, it was everything, because again, we don't want to tell those lies, we don't want to claim those easy victories, but what are we learning? What's the messy part, and how can we confront these places where things happen below the surface, above the surface, and also recognize that we won't fall apart Because this fragility thing, this people being fragile and acting like, you know, you're going to die because you got into a debate with somebody, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, and maybe this is me being old, but I'm just like, we have to get over that ish. Like right now, we just know we can sustain it. You know, but no one's whipping us, right? We can have conversations. We have the tools. We have popular education. We even have games you can play to have serious conversations, right? You can have Post-its. You don't even have to talk to the person. So we can be in practice together.
Yes. Give it up one time for Makani Themba. We can color code this debate. I love it and need it in my life, like yesterday. That's a good segue. I mean, we've already sort of segued, but we talked a little. We hit the top of like what's happened. Obviously, there's a lot, and I'm sure y'all have a lot to contribute to. But sort of let's zoom in a little bit more in terms of what's happening. We know that especially the last couple of weeks have been super intense for many of our folks for 1,000 different systemic reasons. So what's happening, and what do you all think that you and we are supposed to be learning and watching and paying attention to in this particular political climate? Especially in terms of the economy and how that's impacting our folks, but also broadly in movement. Whoever's moved can take it first.
I feel like, I think I'm working.
Y'all hear?
Can you hear me? Yours is working.
Okay.
No.
It was.
Hello? Okay.
Hey.
We back on. I feel like something that I had been taught for many years, but has been like acute in the last few years, is to look for the people that you don't see. So I think lots of different things are happening. So I've been paying attention. So I'm a father. I have 2 children. I have an 18-year-old and an 8-year-old. And there are several things in my life that have had me to imagine what would it be like for my children to be taken, either for me to be taken into incarceration, for me to be killed by a number of things in this world, for them as little black babies to be taken. I mean, I've imagined, unfortunately, had to contend with this idea as a parent. And so what we see, I don't know what the appropriate way to frame this, but these sort of stories we see happening where these families are being separated because of U.S. imperialism being enforced through a border, speaks to me in a particular way as a parent. And so I think about the people that I see, which of course we should pay attention to them, and of course we should fight adamantly for any person being subjected to any kind of violence like that. And as a queer and queer gender nonconforming person, I've looked for that, right? So I'm thinking about who don't we see? What is happening to queer, trans, undocumented people, right? I look for black people, right? Where are all the black babies? Where are all the black families, the black mothers? Like, where are all these black people who we know are being deported, violence had done to them, being killed before they can even cross, right? So I think about, so one of the things that I feel like we have to learn as imperative in terms of how we organize is how to see who we don't see. Because if we don't organize that way, we will replicate these isms. That's right. So we will be well-intentioned in fighting against deportation, and have a white supremacist way of thinking about who's an immigrant. We will be criminalizing some people, saying that other people deserve it. We will not be thinking about the gendered impact, right, of like this whole social reproduction thing. We will be failing, right? We will in some ways be backward toward the thing that we said we were gonna end up in. So I think about that lesson in particular, is how do we see those who we cannot see in our work?
Yes.
I know you got something to say.
Sadly, always, right? Yes to all of that. I totally agree with that, and I also comes to mind even the ways in which we hold hold the ideas around who's crossing the border, because Mexico is now the #1 border crossing for folks from Africa.
That's right.
Right? It's like how people are coming in. So there's all kinds of ways in which people are being constructed, like, oh, they're coming from Mexico, must be certain kinds of people who are being detained, when that is may not be the case, right? So again, I totally agree with that. And then I think the other piece for me is that it seems like, and it wasn't just under Trump, but there's always been something to make us shocked, right? Some awful thing, right? And so it feels like part of what our job is, those people who, like, we've unplugged from the matrix, we know that the current economic set of economic relations aren't working, then part of it is like, how do we help people connect the dots, right, between all of this happening? Like, why do you need to do this? And who profits? And I mean, right now we have a shadow federal government, right? There's the people who you see, you be like, oh, those folks are shadowy already. But there's a whole set of private enterprises parallel to the government for every single agency, whether it's the VA, whether it's health and human services, that it's billions of dollars that is just off the books, essentially, that run these detention centers, that do all this stuff, right? And that folks are essentially making money off of, right? And so what's our analysis? How do we help people understand that this is just not about this momentary, let's get these children out of cages, whatever happens to their parents, as long as they're not separated, like, no, that's not good. Or we're looking at issues like money bail, and underneath it all, we're like, well, don't those people deserve it? Like, so there's the story, the dehumanizing story, the dehumanizing policy, the dehumanizing practice, and that numbs us from action, and then just the sheer overwhelm, right, of everything happening at the same time. And so it's sort of like, how do we get to the point where we're really at root causes and we're not at the level of symptom? How do we connect those dots? How do we starve the beast? How do we think about strategies that are deeper than, and don't get me wrong, we need to stop stuff. We need to intervene. We need to show up, get arrested, all those things. And we also need to be thinking about not only how do we build the parallel economy, but what do we do to starve this current one that's killing our folks? How do we shift the resources out? How do we use our civic power at the local level, create sanctuary cities, create liberated zones, create these spaces? How do we take our money where we work if we have nonprofits, and where are we investing it? How do we really be strategic about starving this beast? Because we actually control, when we talk about, the theme of the conference, what does it mean to own our own? What does it mean to build this economy for all? It's like the capital, a lot of times the capital is close at hand. Mm-hmm. We have more control of it than we think. Of course, they have a lot of control over it too, but it's like, what can we do? How do we get really geeky about these public streams and really understand it and interrupt all that ish?
All that ish. So I want to zoom back out a little bit, and then we're going to open it up for some questions from y'all, and then we'll close it out. We've heard what's happened that got us here a little bit. We briefly heard what's happening right now that we should be paying attention to. What should we be learning right now? Now I want us to think a little bit and share with the comrades in the audience what's possible and what should we be doing to make that possibility a reality.
You looking at? What?
Get your water and then jump on it.
No, I won't have that. I forget what his name was. The mayor of the water moment, the other Watergate. So there's so much, right? I think the short answer is that dreaming is really important in trusting that what we hope can be true, right? Because it's like, how are the plans developed? If the plans are developed based on your worst fear versus your great hope and your great dream, then you have kind of like these messed up organizing strategies. It's like, you're just like, really? Is that the demand? Like, what? No. You know, like our highest demand should not be get children out of cages. It should be something way higher than that. So it's like, what do we really want? Because it does make a difference. It's like visioning is critical, and being clear about that. And then I think also being willing to study. And I don't mean this in a like you have to have a PhD to know some things. But, you know, it's really sad sometimes when people do work, you know, spend a lot of time coming up with an idea that somebody already came up with. Now, sometimes they do that in a Columbus kind of way where they're like, oh, man, you know what, colored people came up with that. I can't give them credit for that. I'm going to have to figure out a new way to name this and colonize this idea. I'm not talking about that. That's messed up. That shouldn't happen, like when you actually knew it happened. But a lot of times when we don't study, when we don't read, we don't connect, we don't invest in learning about our work, then we waste our time. And so I feel like that's the one thing. And then the last thing is that related to that is how we commit to base building, right? And I don't want to diss anybody, I want to diss their work, but a lot of times we're afraid of people in our work. We're afraid of people. We're afraid of people of what that don't, and I'm not even talking about, I'm not saying go organize people who are like the polar opposite of you. Like there's so many more people who agree with you that we don't even talk to, right? Our own families, like who don't even know what we do because, you know, we just kind of like moving. And so it feels like the big question for me right now in the work is like, how are we building enough space for everybody who needs to show up to have something to do and for us to, you know, be in relationship with each other and building trust and working together. And a lot of our organizations are just not ready for people we don't know. But if you have been organizing and you don't have anybody in your, if you haven't talked to someone you don't know, I'm just saying, you need to question your work. And think a little bit about how, and that's not saying, I'm not saying don't stop doing what you're doing, but just think about how do you do it differently, and how can we commit, each one of us, to make sure that there are 10 people we don't know, I'm just saying a month, that we're in contact with and that we're moving into a deeper relationship with.
So 3 things came to mind. One, anything is possible. Both in a good forward sense and also a back repressive sense. Anything is possible. And I think our movements, agreeing with what Makani said, our movements can only be as big as our dreams, right? None of us get any advancements because we asked for something smaller and then oppressors were like, you know what, let's just throw the whole thing in. You know, let's just go. You said you only wanted the buses, we just gonna go ahead and get rid of all of Jim Crow. Like that didn't happen. So that puts an imperative on us to take seriously this vision question, right? And that be the compass for our strategy. That be the compass for where we're trying to go, right? And our strategies adhere to that. I think too, we have some opportunities, and I'm excited for our movement to try to experiment in different ways, particularly with this capitalism question, right? I think that culture is a system, right? It's one of the systems that we have the most stability in some ways to be able to take control in. There's a lot of opportunities for us to contend with, to abolish values and ways that we consider work, labor, and value in culture. I think we should also think about our home places as sites to disrupt capitalism, right? It's often, I mean, it's one of the places we can do the most work around uprooting patriarchy, right? And if we can reimagine, so Huey P. Newton, paraphrasing him, he says something to the effect that power is the ability to define the social phenomena and get people to adhere to it so you get the desired result. Work, as we see it associated with wages, is a social phenomena. There's nothing natural about that, right? Like there is, like carbon didn't get with hydrogen and boom, there was wage labor. Right. Like there's nothing natural about that. Right. Like that's a, you know what I mean? It's not like that. So, but we've taken things like wage labor and thought of them as natural things, but they're actually social phenomena. We've taken labor of raising children to be non-capital valued things, non-valued things, and we've seen that as natural. So I'm saying we have the ability in our own homes to directly contend with patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy in a way. And I'm a firm believer what we cannot practice at home, we ain't gonna be able to do, right? And so I feel like we have a great opportunity, especially when so many people in a different way have access to ideas, where we can talk to each other more rapidly, where information is more readily available to us. Not always good information, but information is more readily available to us. I think we have different opportunities in our homes to really do some of that work. And 3, I continue to be inspired with what we started with, like what had happened. So we come from a people who faced some of the worst forms of colonialism, racism, capitalism, right? We were chattel, we weren't even considered people, right? We were under chattel enslavement, and we defeated that, y'all. Can you imagine? Right? That is a violence to me unimaginable, right? But that was defeated. That was ended, right? Jim Crow. That is my grandmother's story, right? And because of that resistance work, it is not mine, right? That was defeated. That was a particular system of violence codified in a particular way that folks resisted, and we defeated that shit, you know? Sorry, I'm cussing. I'm talking like it's me and you know? So that says to me, right? And this is just science, minus my own spirit. That says to me that it is scientifically possible to defeat this, right? Like, period.
My God. You gotta preach in this place, Em Adams.
Yes.
You know, and then I think, you know, some of us wear those T-shirts. It's like we're the realization of our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? And I think that you know, it's always fascinating to me as a facilitator how hard it is to get people to say what they want. Like, what is your vision?
Very much, yes.
What is your vision? Yes. I remember being in a Southern Movement Assembly space. We were doing an assembly on protecting and defending communities to end state violence. And they were these rad Project South youth, one time for Project South, who had been fighting to defeat a budget proposal that would have allotted $10 million from Atlanta Public Schools to the Atlanta Police Department to police predominantly black schools in South Atlanta. And they had a 10 mil for real campaign. It's dope. You should look it up. And I was like, so tell me what your utopian vision is. And Makani since then checked me because it's not utopian. It's actually totally possible, right? But like, what's your vision? And they like went and they crewed up. They were like, we'll be right back. And they came back to me and they said, okay, in our utopian vision, we would actually be the ones that held the cops accountable. If they came in our school and they acted a fool, we would deal with it. If they came in our neighborhood and they was wilding out, we would handle them. And I was like, dope. Sounds amazing. And in your utopian vision, there would be police?
Right, exactly.
And they were like, shit. Wait, hold up, Ash, hold up. And then they went back into the corner and they talked for a little bit. They came back and they were like, yo, okay, we got it. In our utopian vision, there would be no police because everybody would have what they need. There'd be no point in creating harm.
That's right.
And if my youngins in South Atlanta can get it that quick just when I ask them a second question, then who are we to not be able to concisely and correctly answer the question, what is a new social solidarity economy?
That's right.
When we don't use those visionary, revolutionary, I would argue, visionary muscles, they atrophy. And I think it's time for us to really hold each other accountable to practices where we vision. And not vision what we'll concede to, because I agree with you, I don't think that we should just not be reactionary. We have to, if we want to, do harm reduction and live, right? But like we also should say what our people deserve and demand it, right?
Yes.
And then I think secondly, I know there's some funder people in the room, is like, I also think we have to like really contest what is scalable and what, like if that's actually what is useful for us. Like what is the demand around scale? It's like if you build a co-op and all you serve is your hood or holler, that's dope to me. And I don't care if some, foundation that's mostly my capital anyway is telling me that to get access to that capital, I got to be able to do that 10 times bigger in 10 different places.
Oh, but with 10% of the funding.
With 4% of philanthropic dollars if you live where I live.
Yeah.
And where you live, and probably just about that much where you live. So like this question of scale like is not necessary. I want masses, of course. Yeah, I want more to do more, sure. But only for the sake of getting what our people need. Not for the sake of like continuing to be in this stupid capitalist BS, right?
Exactly.
Quite frankly.
Yes.
I think that I would be, how many Southerners we got in the room? Hey, y'all. So I would be remiss to not be honest about the fact that as goes the South, so goes the nation is not an opinion, it is a fact. It is a fact. All these questions about immigration, even the most conservative, white, hating ass person in the South, especially rural communities that farm, are like, yo man, this immigration stuff is messed up. That's not good for my paycheck. Don't do that, right? So it's like, I think there's just so much to be said about what it means to have a lens on the South as the problem and not the solution, y'all. Especially in terms of talking about new social solidarity economies. Y'all talking about labor when like black folks in Alabama, Mississippi, and the Deep South and Central Appalachia were building co-ops in the 20s. I think somebody's brother might have wrote a book about it.
19th century. Yes.
Y'all heard of Hammer and Hoe? Read it. I tell somebody to read it once a week. Shout out to Robin.
Shout out to Robin. Do that on video.
Do that on video. Yeah, we love you, Robin. Right? It's like actually black people and indigenous people and other like racially particularly marginalized and gender oppressed people have been building new social solidarity economies in the South for like definitely longer than I was itching my mama and daddy's memory. Right? So like what does it mean to have a lens on the South as the problem? Or the white working class, which is not how they even talk about themselves.
Right.
Right? The myth that rural white people who are working class or working poor or just like cash poor folks, period, are Trump supporters when actually the reality is that most of them didn't vote at all.
That's right.
Right? What does it mean like in terms of like who we don't see to concede space to the right around the economy, which I think we do all too often. So I would say, look at the South, right? Learn from the South, amplify the South. I would say that our elders and ancestors said by any means necessary. And what my elders have taught me is when we say by any means, they mean by all of them.
That's right.
Silly fights between labor, unions, worker centers, and folks building cooperatives, we should struggle.
Right.
But if they win in, and we can win to here together, let's win to here together. Let's build this new social solidarity economy, right? I might not, policy, if you had asked me 2 years ago if I would be with M and Makani building the Movement for Black Lives policy table, I would have laughed you off the block. I would have been like, that is not revolutionary. That is reformist. That cannot be transformative, right? And now, what I'm realizing is, again, shout out to Robin. Robin said we were going to usher in the third Reconstruction. through that policy platform, that it can in fact be revolutionary. And so I think we need to not be in silly, unprincipled fights about tactics, right? We need to develop multi-tactical strategies to build this new social solidarity economy that y'all are talking about all week. And then finally, I would say, and Miriam Kaba actually was just talking about this on social media, shout out to Miriam. You know, one of the questions that I get most often is like, times are so hard. And I'm like, time's been hard, right? And hard is relative, right? But like, where do you find hope? And I'm like, you know, I was struggling to figure out like a way to answer that question that felt genuine, you know? Not because I'm not hopeful, I'm a Gemini, realist and optimist at the same time, right? Jesus here.
That's a nice way to put it.
You know what I'm saying? I have both at the same time. I'm a realist and I'm optimistic. And I live in the South, I see people winning all the time, right? But Miriam made such a great intervention that I think we need to be saying, is that like hope is actually a practice. It's not just a thing that is.
That's right.
You either do it or you don't. You are either hopeful or you're not.
That's right.
And if you don't practice that, then what is the fucking point?
Right.
Right? What is the point?
Right.
Right?
Yes.
I refuse to believe as a Southerner, and you know, Southerners tend not to get into fights that we don't think we can win. I refuse to think that like these capitalists are somehow more smart or more savvy
That's right.
than the people in this room. And even more, I don't believe that like the people that live on the block that I was born on or the hollers that I've organized and grown up in, I think they're even smarter than me. And so I definitely don't believe that no 45 or his cronies are any more brilliant or capable of building revolutionary movements than regular ass people. And that, to me, is like the reason why hopefulness as a practice is critically important. So for those of us that have committed our lives to both in our homes and in our nonprofits and in the other organizations, the infrastructure and institutions that we build, to build a new social solidarity economy, that this practice of hopefulness, I think, is going to be critical for us to actually get to the place where it's not utopian.
That's right.
It's literally just the thing that if we just exploit the contradictions and open the door, we'll see in our lifetime. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a cop-out to believe that we cannot see and practice liberation right now.
That's right.
Right now.
That's right.
So,
Yes.
now we want to turn it back to you for a little bit. And so we've got some homies that are going to bring mics out to you all. Do you need these? Yeah. And so we're going to give you all a minute to like ask us some questions. Act right. Be nice to the mic holders. Can we do that? Can we drink a cup of Act Right and like be in conversation with each other real quick? All right, let's do it.
And also, family, just another reminder around the translation. So, because they're going to be trying to catch you and hear what you say so everybody can participate. And I just want to also just give a shout out to Catalina and the crew, because language justice is so important as folks are lining up. And also acknowledge Catalina, because I've learned so much between her and Pancho Reyes about language justice over the years and how important it is. And again, as Em started us off with, is privilege is what you get to forget, you know. And so I'm just so grateful that you all are here and what you've been doing over decades, really, of the work. Thank you.
Great. So if folks have questions, just wave at me. All right, come on up. And tell us who you are and where you're from. Shout out your crew.
My name is Rami. I was going to ask, so as a person who is not only a person of color, but also a youth of color, a trans person, a queer person, what can I do for my community?
Okay. We're going to take a couple, but we got you. Wave at me if you have a question so we can get the mic to you. All right. It's coming, it's coming.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm from Waterbury, Connecticut. It's not like Fairfield County type Connecticut. Sorry, was I not talking loud enough at first? Better? Great. You were talking about carbon and hydrogen, I saw in the book that you listed yourself as a scientist, and I'm really curious about what you think the role of science and engineering is in these revolutionary movements, because I do think that there's a bit more to it than people have kind of glossed over lately.
Y'all are bringing it with these questions. Let's take one more, and then we'll answer those three, and then we'll take some more. There's one right there.
Got one right
there. Right there.
Turn, oh, no.
Oh, what?
No.
We'll come to you too.
Hi, I'm Carol from Puerto Rico. I was asking, how can you make sure that when you practice hope, it doesn't become like a false promise or false promise?
Yep, great questions. Okay, so we've got like, how do I show up as like a marginalized person, queer, trans, young person? We got the question about the importance of science in this revolutionary moment. And the question about like how to be hopeful without false promises. Anybody want to kick it off? You got excited about the science question.
Oh. Answer all of them.
So I am a scientist. I was trained in several different types of science. So I spent a lot of time studying what people called hard science, so physics, biology. I went to college for bacteriology. So I spent a lot of time thinking about the laws and rules of what could be considered the natural world. And then I also was introduced to movement building as a form of science, social science, so meaning it too has laws, it too has rules of how we can interpret, understand, intervene, and also predict outcomes. So the first thing that I say to people who are often like hard scientists is that science as a body of work is actually not objective. It's really not a neutral thing. So when we learn about science, we learn about the rules and laws like physics. It's like, oh, this is how it is. It's not to say some of the laws it's not to say that some of the teachings can't be applied the way that we've been taught that they were applied, but I mean the use of science. So science has been used to justify eugenics. Science has been used to justify racism, gender oppression, and a lot of things. Science is often used to justify or try to dismiss the work of folks who are working against climate injustices and environmental violence. I'm saying all that to say is too often scientists who are trained in white Western science are think of themselves as that they can be neutral, separate, removed from the social conditions in which they are trained. That is a huge error. That is actually that's not true. And in fact, as I was learning more about social science, I learned more about African philosophers, and one of the main differences between African philosophy and white Western philosophy is this concept of objectivity, where African people say you cannot remove yourself from the thing that you study, right, and that you actually have impact and imprint on it. So the short thing that I would say to people who consider themselves scientists, one, is to really observe and unpeel the things that are truly laws and things based on the actual natural world versus what are values instilled in observations, experiments that we try to apply natural laws to. So that's one, is like what actually is science, what is not. And then two, using those skills to advance the work of social movements. So if you know physical science, how are you participating in advancing efforts around climate justice, environmental justice? If you know medical science, how are you uplifting the work of natural medicine? How are you fighting to end bad trade policies that limit scientific advancements from reaching particular countries, etc. That's what I would say.
So good. You want to answer any of the others before we?
I'm good.
All right. So I think I've got the science question. I think M knocked it out of the park. I was a liberal arts student. To the question of hope and how to throw down in your home space, I think they're both related. I mean, one, I think you're already doing it. You're showing up here. You're participating, you're asking your questions. I think then for me, it's like, what is my accountability to home, right? It's like, if I just come here, we have some intellectually stimulating conversations and then I feel smarter, but I don't do anything with it, then what was the point of my community making the sacrifice for me to be here, right? And so I think part of it is just continuing to show up as your full self, which is making space for so many people. Coming in these spaces, bringing your full self, and then making sure that we're like having those conversations back home is one of the ways that I think I try to be accountable to the people that I'm of. I think to the question of hope and how to not lean into being so hopeful that you're lying to the people. You know, I think Makani said, like, claim no easy victories, like, be honest and transparent. This shit, that's what Cabral said through the embodiment in Makani, indeed. Is claim no easy victories and tell no lies, right? I think that the thing that resonates with me the most about what Miriam said is that demanding what our people deserve, there's no lie about what our people deserve, right? It is not a lie that our people deserve something better than capitalism, right? It's no lie to demand that our people deserve to be able to be in communities with each other where they can bring their full selves with love and dignity, right? It's also no lie that that is work. It is a practice, and we all create harm and are gonna mess it all up along the way, right? So I think we can be honest while also not saying like, well, you know what, 45 got elected, it's a wrap, right? Because if so, then what's the point in spending all this money to bring us together to have these conversations, right? So I think it's a delicate dance of being honest with the people about the realities of where we are in this political moment. I think that far too many of us with visibility are not honest about the nuance of the crisis, right? And don't do enough study to even understand it, right? Or think it's the first time that there's been a crisis, right? Or that we're the first, last, and only to do this work, which is never true, right? And so I think being honest about that, being in a practice of study and a practice of being, pushing our people to be hopeful and to develop strategies that are really rooted in what they deserve. If we stay in that niche, I don't think we can, you know, I think we can do the delicate dance of being honest about the urgency of now and the hopefulness of what we deserve. And our ability to actually achieve it in our lifetime, I think both are possible.
I just want to add one quick thing, you know, Harriet Tubman is my Orisha at this point. I've just really so feel her, so feel Sojourner Truth, so feel the people who could like see some things. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being in the midst of chattel slavery and be like, I'm gonna come back and get people out. Like, you know, some people, you know, if you were doing like the little organizing, like little power mat, you'd be like, that's not a good strategy. Right? And so, right? And then you think, you know, part of what hope is, it's not even about what's probable, it's about a kind of a beam, a radar, a something that's like, there is more is possible, right? And every time we get there, the magic happens. So I just want to say that I don't know if I don't think you can be too Pollyanna. You can be irresponsible about not dealing with the risks. But in terms of what's the vision, what's possible, I think that the better we can hone our radar and just be really clear, and I think some of that is about a personal practice of quiet. You know, what is our personal practice to even have the space to imagine each day and to think, because a lot of times as organizers, we sleep with our phones next to our beds. We, you know, I mean, maybe not you, maybe I'm telling too much of my own business, right? But I mean, a lot of us, we're not making space for any kind of peace to even do that. And one of the things as I read about Harriet Tubman, or over the years have read about her, is how much space she took to be in quiet, to listen to what she called the voice. And I'm thinking, so that to me is what hope is. It's like, what is your stillness practice to be like, this, I can see this is possible. It doesn't even matter if it seems not possible, this is what we need. It doesn't matter how possible it seems, because we would not be here based on that.
It feels real, yeah. I mean, it's also like, we do it flippantly all the time, collectively, right? Like, raise your hand if you've ever been in the streets and said, I believe that we will win.
But were you telling the truth, though?
Were you telling the truth? Like, right? And if you were telling the truth, how is that not a declaration of faith?
That's right.
Can you touch the wind? Can you see it or smell it or hear it, right? It's literally the evidence of things unseen,
That's
right? You know, if you've ever chanted like, the people united will never be defeated, like, do you believe that? Because if so, that's a promise, right? If you've ever, we're going to do this later, but like if you've ever answered, I'm on the freedom side, so which side are you on? That is literally a declaration, right? You were making a commitment to something. And so I think that if we're calling people into collective practice around that, if that's actually what that cultural organizing is, then it's up to us to actually be in an accountable practice to the living out of that every day in lifetime. It's how I treat my comrades, right? It's how I show up to parent my child. It's how I treat my own body, right? Like all of those things, I think, are declarations of faith that then I have to be held accountable to practice daily. And I think that if we do more of that, building beloved community becomes so much more commonsensical if we're taking that individual time and holding each other to collective practice.
So really, I'll be very brief. So really, two things about the hope question and telling the truth. So one, I think, for me, people who inspire me most are people who held a vision that I couldn't see. And what commits people, what makes people do and sacrifice to the point that they sacrifice, it ain't because of the pain, it's because of the hope.
That's right.
Because they don't need to come to your organization to have pain. They can stay home, right? What commits people, what make people endure and give and continue to show up is the hope that they may have for their children to have a different life. It is the hope that they themselves, a parent, or just something that can be different, right? Like that's their own thing. Which brings me to my second thing. We have to believe that our communities are powerful enough to hold the truth. I have made that mistake. I have made the mistake, and I was not conscious when I made the mistake, but I had made the mistake of being paternalistic in my organizing. I had made the mistake of understanding things and thinking that if I said the full story or if I told the full picture that people wouldn't be invested the same. I was young, and that was a huge error. And thankfully, my commitment to the work, my relationships that I had built, that even when I messed up, I still had a community to be in and still to organize. And I had the best of intentions, right? I'm saying that to say, as a caretaker, as a father, as a person who had to caretake for my mother who's no longer living, as a person who caretakes in my family, I have really developed caretaking ways of being, which is not always the best thing to do as a political leader. Is because I was doing things to protect members. I was doing things to protect, and these are people who were like coming into us for services. So I wasn't mistreating people, that's not what I'm saying. I wasn't doing that, but what I was not doing was fully inviting people into the understanding that I had that could have given them options that I did not give them because I didn't know. Perhaps I wondered if they were not capable. I wondered if I didn't know what they would do. I didn't know if they felt politicized enough to be kept to the vision. But by doing that, I kept them out of being further in the movement, right? And so there's something about believing and trusting that the community that you are in partnership in it, and not this great big figure, bigger than, better than, more capable than, even if it doesn't come from that place, that can be the impact, right? And I really learned that in this trip I went to where I studied with the Abahali movement in South Africa. And the thing that this organization kept saying, and I really got 8 years ago, was like, we do it with people, not for people. And if you're doing it with them, you have to be radically honest. You have to be able to say, I don't know, but I'm going to try. I can't save you if the cops come here. We can practice, we can plan, but you got to know your own risk. And you got to trust that people are in this fight and just as committed as you. Otherwise, it's not really a movement of people. It's a action of leadership.
That's right.
Hey, Ash.
I think we're at time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saddens me to say that.
This brother had his hand up for a minute. Can we just take that one and then we'll close it down?
Yes.
All
Okay,
right.
let's
so
do it.
we're gonna make sure you get a mic right over here, and then we're gonna close it down.
Thank you. We are in a democracy, and I'm glad for it. But our democracy is a one-species democracy. There are many species on the planet, and last 50 years, our numbers have more than doubled, and many species numbers have less than halved, and many have gone extinct. And what is our responsibility as the leading species which is hogging most of the planet to cut down our selfish hogging and make more room for the other species which are going extinct?
Thank you for that. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Everybody who is willing and able, please rise with us. As I mentioned earlier, you know, as we were mentioning earlier, we believe that like these cultural practices that we engage in are actually like ways to hold each other to accountability around commitments, right? And so, as the comrade was saying, right, like how we interact with our relatives that are of other species, this planet, each other, we've got to make a commitment, right, to this, what it means to own our power and exercise it in ways that are not harmful, right? Towards building a new social solidarity economy that is good for the people and everything else on this planet and in the universe, right? So, we were talking a little earlier about how we could close this thing down, and we figured we would call you into making commitment with us. So this song that we're going to sing actually comes from Central Appalachia, where I'm from. A little coal miner's wife who decided she was going to ask her people which side they were on, right? And then, you know, in terms of like unions, bosses, scabs, the people, right? And then fast forward to like the 90s, I guess, and this rad crew of Latinx organizers and hip hop artists called Rebel Diaz remixed it. But wait, I skipped a generation. In the 60s, 50s and 60s, there was this crew called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They had some freedom singers that used to travel all over the place. They remixed it first. Right? And they were talking about like, are you like a thug for like these like Bull Connors of the world, or are you about this like freedom and liberation stuff, right? Obviously, they moved the needle towards winning, right? Then Rebel Diaz came in and they was like, yo, you can't leave us out, and they remixed it again. In fact, it was Tennesseans that told them that the chorus that they were using on their cover was from the SNCC Freedom Singers, right? And then fast forward again to the 2000s, there was this crew of like rabble-rousing black and brown young people called Freedom Side. And they did incredible work about building the bridge between black young people and especially undocumented brown youth. We're gonna sing their version tonight. And it's super easy. We're gonna sing together, which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? And then the turn-up crew is gonna say, we on the freedom side, right? So if you wanna sing it, you're gonna sing, which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? The turn-up crew, if you are the turn-up crew, that's where you get lit, right? We on the freedom side, right? We making a declaration, right? We the winners. We the ones that actually gonna bring this freedom in our lifetime, right? So, again, the chorus. If you're singing, sing it with me. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom side. Perfect. Oh, y'all was ready. Yes, I heard you. Well, then the verses is our opportunity to call in the great cloud of witnesses that have been on the freedom side before us now, right? And just pull them into the room with us, right? So I might be like, Makani Themba is a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. Say what? And we gonna fight all day and night until we get it right. Got it? So I'm gonna say, M. Adams is a freedom fighter and they taught us how to fight. Say what? And we gonna fight all day and night until we get it right. And then we go into the chorus. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on?
We on the freedom side.
Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on?
We on the freedom side.
Okay, you got it? Y'all ready to sing it?
Just one chorus.
Now listen. If I see you singing it and you saying like, you know, I'm on the freedom side and I see you out in these movement streets and you not on the freedom side, I'm gonna be like, what's good? Well, we was at CommonBound. Right? And if you see us out here wilding, getting out of control, being harmful, you can be like, but I thought you said at CommonBound on the stage that y'all was on the freedom side, right? This about accountability is what we building. Y'all cool with that? Making a commitment tonight? Yeah. Picking a side? All right, let's do this. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom side. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom side. Harriet Tubman was a freedom fighter and she taught us how to fight. And we gon' fight all day and night until we get it right. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom side. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom Palestinians are some freedom fighters and they taught us how to fight. And we gon' fight all day and night until we get it right. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Ed Whitfield is a freedom fighter and taught us how to fight. And he won't fight until your night, until we get it right. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom side. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? We on the freedom side. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Give it up for yourselves one time. Give it up for this incredible panel. Give it up to NEC!
Yes, yes. I know. We all decided to have Jesus.
All right, everybody, that's it. You can go home. Workshops start at 9. Actually, one more. Can we get another round of applause for that incredible panel? They deserve that.